Breaking the cycle of trauma, how a mom's trauma can impact her child's development. Hello everyone, my name is Kendra McLaughlin. I am a trauma and addiction specialist with GILD Coaching, and I am here today to talk about how a mother's trauma can affect her child right from utero all the way to adulthood for the child. So let's get started with this important information. When someone experiences trauma, the physical and emotional effects can sometimes impact their kids, right? This can begin even before they're born, in utero, as they call it. You see, during times of stress, the body releases cortisol, which is a good thing because it's the body's way to effectively cope with what's going on around us. But when trauma elevates the cortisol level to an unhealthy level, it can have an epigenetic impact not only on the mom, but on their children as well, or the child as well. So how does this happen? Let me show you how it happens. So let's say you have a mother who experiences a traumatic event and she's pregnant, and the mother releases cortisol. Let's say she got into a car accident and her body's going to automatically release cortisol. The baby absorbs the cortisol through the placenta. And as we just talked about, when you're in a trauma-related event, it releases a lot of cortisol. So there's an overabundance of it. And this can impact the baby's HPA axis. It can impact the central nervous system of the baby, the limbic system, the autonomic nervous system. So it literally impacts the whole system of this tiny little baby in utero. When the caregiver struggles to regulate, once the baby is born, what can happen is there may be attachment relationship issues because the mom hasn't, and this is for someone who hasn't received help for their trauma. There may have attachment relationship issues between the mom and the baby, or it might be strained because the mom didn't get help on how to deal with her feelings about what happened in the traumatic event. And this can impact the child's development and the development of a core sense of self. So the baby, because it doesn't have a good attachment to the mom, can really develop a unhealthy sense of self as it's growing up into teen years and then into adulthood. And its ability to integrate in experiences may diminish, as well as just lots of problems relating to people as it's getting into childhood up into adulthood. So as the child grows up and becomes an adult, and so now the child is an adult. So if you are an adult who had a mom who never dealt with her trauma, and this doesn't have to be when she was pregnant, this could be when you were a kid. Maybe your mom had an experience like my mom did, where her husband drowned with his two friends, and she's experiencing this traumatic event, and her attachment relationship with her child isn't right, and the child just feels like he or she is growing up lost and without a good sense of self because the mother is dealing with her trauma. But anyway, now the baby is grown up and is an adult, and if it's a person that has had a mom that has never dealt with their trauma, they may be experiencing the following things. They may be more prone to PTSD. They may struggle to repair after a conflict. So let's say they have a conflict with a boss or someone that they know or their loved one. They struggle with relationships typically. They may be prone to disassociate. So if they get mad at somebody, they'll just go away instead of trying to work through it. They may be emotionally detached. Maybe they don't know how to love, or they don't know how to be angry or do all the emotional things that people do. They unintentionally bring out negative behaviors in others because of the way they're acting and the choices that they're making. So these are some of the things. This is how it happens. If you have a person that hasn't dealt with their trauma and then they have children, because they haven't dealt with their trauma, if they're pregnant, the baby's really going to feel it. But let's say they weren't even pregnant. Let's say it happened after pregnancy. Because of the way the mother is behaving and the choices that they're making, it creates a strained relationship, and lots of things happen. Unhealthy things happen. And as that baby gets into adulthood, it carries all of that stuff with them in their decision making and in their life. So that's how it works. It's like a cycle. And that's why when it's so important, if you or if you know somebody who's been through a traumatic experience, it doesn't just go away. It doesn't. It affects your whole life. And the reason it does is because it literally affects your brain. It affects your whole nervous system. Your brain changes. You know, when you've had a traumatic event, your brain changes, and you use modes of survival that may work when, you know, in the beginning when you're experiencing that trauma, but as you go along in life, those modes of being able to cope will not be healthy ways to live your life, and you'll start to see it's like a cycle. You'll start to see you're making bad decisions, unhealthy decisions, you're feeling bad about yourself, you may go into a shame guilt cycle. So getting treatment for whatever trauma that you've been through, or if you know of somebody that's been through trauma, is super important, not just for themselves to be able to live a life of passion and purpose and to get beyond that, but also for their loved ones, for their children, for their families. You know, and it can be a cycle that impacts generation after generation after generation. But the good news is that the healing of trauma can break this loop. It literally can. So it's really important to seek help from someone who has experience in trauma, someone who's maybe been through it and maybe has a great program like we do at GILD Coaching. We have a program called Recovery Focus Reset that will help you get through and work through your trauma so that you can move forward and it doesn't affect the rest of your family, your children, and then your grandchildren, and so on and so forth. I hope this video has been helpful for you, and if you know someone that could use this information, please don't hesitate to pass it on. And thank you so much for being here today. I'll see you on the next video.